thank you so much for showing up. It's always a bit of an experiment doing these kinds of... This is so weird in English, a live recording of a podcast. That sentence simply does not work, but it is a recording of a podcast with a live audience.
Yeah.
And what's even better is, it's on video. So we actually had a live audience. Otherwise, I usually have a soundboard here with my own audience, which is perfect. So whenever we say something fun, rare, but it happens, we just punch the button and we have a huge happy sound. We're going to be starting. We don't have the intro music, so you just need to breathe deep. And this is why we can't have nice things. Quiet. We're going to kick it off. So we're going to add the intro music in post. But
before we start recording,
yes,
how will the questions work with the roving microphone?
So there is a roving microphone. If there are any questions, any comments, and they are highly encouraged, just whip up a hand and Robert will come over and talk to them. So that is not going to be able to go out on the live. You wouldn't happen to have an extra handheld microphone, would you? No, so no worries.
Don't.
So, but that's going to go on this deck, so it's going to be on the actual recording that we're releasing after this. We are going to talk about Agile and Scrum and all kinds of weird acronyms. It's a conversation, but it's more of a discussion, so we absolutely encourage any ideas, any opinions. We have a lot of those, but it'd be even better if you had your own opinions. Well, we are kicking things off. Only a couple of minutes late.
We are usually not late. We overrun time.
I'm sure we can do both.
Yes.
But that is generally frowned upon at things like this. And we try to be nice so we can come back.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we were allowed to do this last year. They should have learned.
I wasn't here. It's me they want.
I was moderating you last year.
Yeah. And he's here. Is that considered a bribe? This is why we always like to... We
have 2 extra spots up here. Anybody want to join? No. So I'm... Do you have the that's a very small screen. I need to read this. Oh man, I should have brought my glasses. Anyways, are we ready to go?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you ready to go?
Yes.
Are you in the right room?
Yeah.
All right, just checking. I'm punching it. Hello and welcome. I'm Alexander.
I'm Simon.
I'm Heini. I'm Reitze, standing in for Heini.
I thought there was something odd about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so indeed. So we are Tech, covering the latest from the IT industry with a specific focus on Microsoft and how to get actual value from technology. This is episode 260, recorded on, what is it, the 23rd of March of 2024. You can find this and our previous episodes on kneedeepintech.com, iTunes, Spotify, and on just about every podcasting platform in history. So we were supposed to be the usual 3 delinquents. Unfortunately, Heini was not Finnish enough, so she caught a cold, which is something that we will remind her of many, many times, for sure. But this is going to be a conversation on Agile and Scrum and frameworks. And I think we probably need to start with just a bit of a laying of a base so we know what we are talking about. Mm-hmm. Could you walk us through roughly what are these things? What are they supposed to achieve, and why would they be a good thing?
So I actually thought of this in the shower this morning for some reason. Showers are good at that. So let's start from the back, closest to where you and a lot of you in the room are, like with DataOps.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was the test run. Now this thing is actually recording. So anyway, hello and welcome. I'm Alexander.
I'm Simon.
I'm Heini. I mean, Reitze. Sorry.
Well, it happens. So we are Native Tech, covering the latest from the IT industry with a specific focus on Microsoft and how to get actual value from technology. This is episode 260, recorded on March the 23rd of 2024. You will be able to find this and our previous episodes on nativetech.com, iTunes, Spotify, and on most podcasting platforms. Why are we here again? So we are back at SQL Bits 2024. For some reason, they wanted us back. We were here in 2023, and they did clearly not learn their lesson, so we are here in 2024. We are going to have a discussion around frameworks, Scrum, Agile, all kinds of interesting acronyms that you can probably come up with. And we highly encourage the audience to be part of this because we are now recording in front of a live audience. I said it right the first time.
Yeah, and
Well
for
done.
the ones that wonder what happens when you fail to reach the goals of a sprint, please watch the video recording of this episode to see how Alexander messed up.
I caught it rather quickly, though. It was only just a few minutes of recording. It turns out that if your recording equipment has all the channels set to mute, it's a wonderfully quiet episode.
So that is when you're recording dead, compared
that's
to
what-
recording live as we do now.
This is going to be a very long episode.
No, 30 minutes because we can't run over this time.
Well played. Could you take this opportunity to walk us through what is the whole point of a framework and all those things?
Yeah, so the way I see it, and then dear co-hosts and audience, please chip in if you want. Let's start with DataOps, because that's what most of you do. DataOps is, of course, based on DevOps principles, tools, techniques, and people. DevOps, in turn, is a way of applying Agile principles on operations, so where we use code one way or another to achieve a certain goal. And Agile is a way of working where you do your best to be able to do bits and pieces differently depending on the goals that you have or have not achieved.
Working sounds boring.
That's not supposed to be boring, but you might think so if you do it wrong, and that's why we're here. Because I know that most of us probably have had situations where you have heard, yeah, we will run an Agile project. And then everything just turns out to be, it's just an excuse to not have any guidelines, rules, we'll just wing it. And that's really not what Agile is, in my opinion.
No, and that is a very, very good point. What is Agile? Could we really backtrack so far? What is Agile and what is the point of Agile? And also, while we're on the subject, what is Scrum and what is the point of Scrum? Is this something you want to cover, Reitze?
Well, I've been working in a number of Scrum projects, which should have been like sprints of 2 to 4 weeks. And within those 4 weeks, a number of goals should be reached, which is the basic theory of Scrum. Short sprints, reaching goals, meeting at the beginning of the day, doing a stand-up, telling the others where there are blockers or what you're working on, and move on and make sure at the end of the 4 weeks your work is done. In practice, though, sometimes it seems like an excuse to still work like a waterfall, but chop it up in smaller pieces. Or, even worse, when people really stick to all the theory of Scrum, have a lot of meetings talking about what we're doing, what we're supposed to be doing, and then run out of time to actually do the stuff.
Yeah.
I have so many thoughts on this, but please, Simon.
But I think you're on point that you can't run a project with an Agile discipline if you do not both change the way you work, get your team to actually understand it, and break down the goals. And first and foremost, have an overreaching strategy, an overreaching architecture, an overreaching goal that you want to achieve by completing a number of sprints.
Yep.
If you just see it as we have one big goal, and we, like you said, chop it up in smaller pieces to get to that point, you still don't have the nimbleness of changing things around when things break. You will mostly just push on, put in more hours, put in more people to work those hours, and still fail, but in an even more spectacular way than you tried to avoid the first time.
Yep. And something that goes with that is that the people inside this project will get frustrated because they want to reach a goal, but for some reason they can't reach it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well, because we look at, I have customers that say, we don't want a project manager, we don't want an agile coach, we are running an agile project, we don't need a project manager. But my view of a scrum master or an agile coach or a project leader or project manager is that they should listen to what is stopping us from reaching the goal and sort that out. That's their only goal. Perhaps not in life, but ideally in the project.
I think it's a skill to be a good scrum master.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
When you've got people within the project trying to be a scrum master, you're already setting up for failure.
Yeah.
And I'm
now.
So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking. So let's see if what happens when I do this analogy. Anybody heard of CrossFit? Yeah. How would you describe the average CrossFitter that have found CrossFit and really dove into CrossFit? They're fanatics, all of them. They're in unreasonably good shape, like frustratingly good shape, and everything is because of CrossFit, and CrossFit is the best thing ever. CrossFit is a cult. That is a very good point, Els. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the analogy I'm trying to do here is I've seen so many times that people use Agile and Scrum and all kinds of frameworks to further the framework. The framework is way more important than the work. And that's where I think we go from a help to a hindrance, when we're more busy doing things by the numbers and kind of lose track of why are we trying to do this. Anybody who's been to any of my sessions know that I keep harking on about that it's not about the tech, it's all about the people, and it's all about the processes. How do we use processes and people to further anything? And that's why I find that in many cases these frameworks really work more as a hindrance than a help. What's your experience with that?
I just want to state that I'm very pro the agile way of working, regardless if you use code or not.
But are you pro CrossFit?
I am.
Okay.
I just don't have time to join that cult, but I would love to. Matt Fraser is my goal image to some extent, which you couldn't believe. But I can see a lot of other analogies with CrossFit and Agile, to be honest. But I'm positive, but I've seen, like you said, it being used. The purpose of running the project is to see that we can use Agile as a working method. And already there you have kind of failed.
Well, to be honest, I'm on Team Alexander because I've seen the cult being active within a project I've been working in, where it's we should do this, we should do this, we should do this, and if you want to deviate or skip certain parts of the Scrum methodology, you'll be frowned upon or worse. Whereas I think it should be helpful and you should take the parts out that work for that specific project. Again, about the people, not about the tech.
That's a reasonable point. So instead of taking the whole shebang, you pick out the pieces that seem to work for you. So what I'm hearing here is every project that I'll be part of going forward will only be meetings. Taking the things that I think sounds fun and skipping the rest. So no work is ever going to be done. We're only going to do meetings.
Now, that explains so much about you, because you have, for your entire life, misunderstood the word fun. That's why you don't smile.
I'm highly offended.
What you just felt is not equivalent of fun. Make sense?
So there's a reason why I do all the audio mixing.
And editing.
And editing.
So let's look at the ask the audience. What's your thoughts so far on what we have talked about?
So essentially, how do you make this crap work? That's a really good question. I think that's the crux of the whole thing. It's so easy to get just bogged down in the minutiae of the specific framework and not do the work. I would guess, and this is me guessing because I'm not very well versed in this, experience. And also the need for someone who knows how to do it, not just some poor dude that goes, yes, sir, you're a Scrum Master. It's Tuesday, you're going to be a Scrum Master. Make sense?
Yeah, I also do think that you need to take a step back. I just by coincidence actually travel around with the DevOps handbook currently in my backpack. I think you need to go back to like the foundations of it and start with what are the first things, the most important things to make this work at all. And to me, it's really to have a clear goal for the team. Like, what is the long-term goal we want to reach? And try to cut that down into smaller goals that you then could put into sprints. But start by really have a clear and shared image of what the goal is, and then be very open to why aren't we currently moving towards the goal in any meeting you have, even if you do a waterfall project. So a common shared goal, break that down into smaller goals, and always be very open to feedback on why aren't we achieving the small goals that we set out on the path to achieve the bigger one. I think that would work for both a waterfall or a more, doing air quotes here for the podcast, legacy way of working, but would still have the most vital aspects of a more agile approach to it. I think everyone would buy into it.
Yeah, I think it also has to do a lot, or it has a lot to do with communication.
Yeah.
Talking with each other, what works, what doesn't work. I've tried a few different strategies, from being very vocal about this doesn't work, we should skip this. And if you're too direct, like most of our Dutch people are, something will break. If you're not communicating at all, that doesn't work either. So you need to find a balance, and you need to find a balance within the project. Every project is different, every project has different people in it. So you need to find a balance, what kind of communication works, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't think you can work in an agile or DevOpsy way without being humble.
Yeah. Oh, yes, you can. We're going to get back to that. You have another question? Yeah. No, and that is a super good point, because take cloud, for instance. I can tell you down to the cent what you've spent last month. Can I just as easily tell you how much you will be spending next month? No, I can't. Why is that? Because there's no such thing as a static workload. Everything changes. Maybe not day to day, but everything changes over time. So why shouldn't we have our frameworks change with us as we move forward as well? So very, very good point. Any extra comments?
We will add all of the excellent book suggestions and game suggestions onto the show notes later on.
Yep. Dr. Holt, I have. Take the customers out. But no, that's hard. What do you say?
I think it goes back to what we try to achieve with this podcast, the value. You, as a team, must be dedicated in actually first listening to the retrospective and then taking actions on it and proving that you did change something and it did change for the better. I do think that in a lot of occasions, like you said before, Reza, that we have all our focus on achieving the goal. We can do the fixing later, but that doesn't work in a world where, like Alexander said, everything changes in terms of cost. We can change the goals, things change around us. We need to be agile and really ensure that we take care of the things that are up on the surface when we do the sprint, like look back at the sprint and actually take care of what is at fault at that specific point in time. Otherwise, why do them? Like, it's with a lot of projects as well. When you're done with the project, regardless of how it went, you always celebrate, we're done with the project, and then you move on. Because we're done with the project. Who cares about what's left over? That's now that's someone else's problem. So I do think really caring about what you find in the retrospectives, taking care of it, and proving that we did improve should be able to make it work. But a lot of organizations, that's why we're here, have been burned by Agile and DevOps previously, and therefore, why keep on doing it?
And what I've also found in retrospectives is that people are afraid to look back on their work and maybe find out, ooh, I made a mistake, or I haven't been working in the best way possible, and having to admit that in front of other people, which is, it shouldn't be a problem, because you want to learn also from each other. So admit that, all right, I tried this way of working, it didn't work, so we need to change something.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, I will be punished because I made a mistake.
Indeed. So in some of these, never mind.
Hi, you said that one of the things that can predispose you to success in Agile is having the experience or a good Scrum Master. How do you become one of those?
Oh.
She had to ask the question. How do you become one? So that is a super good question, and this is also sort of kind of where I start to see things going wrong. Because you don't wake up one Tuesday morning and call yourself a Scrum Master. Well, you can, but you're going to be facing some issues. There are a lot of very rigid training to go through in order to be certified as an Agile coach or a Scrum Master. And everybody needs to start somewhere. And you need to have a solid idea of the foundation of the framework. Then comes the trick when you start applying this. This is me being an old...
An old what? Old we know. What else?
Grumpy?
We know that as well.
Yes, old grumpy male. What I'm getting at is, I think it is a very, very bad idea for a 20-year-old coming straight from uni, going straight into Scrum Master and trying to do that. Why? Because I think you need experience with people, you need experience with processes, you need to experience how to screw things up before you're really qualified to go into that kind of role.
I don't agree at all.
Oh, I know you don't.
I think you put your head on the nail there. It's about experiences. It's about people. If you are good at handling people, their frustrations, their joys, I do think that you can be a very successful Scrum Master or Agile coach from the start. Like Alexander said, you need to understand what you're trying to achieve in the framework you work after. But this is the place where I see that people with people's skills really fulfills a vital role within IT, or in data for the matter. So if you have experience like working in call centers or working in hospitality or working where you need to solve challenges and listen to people, I do think that is really what sets people apart. We have a friend, Erin, who lives up in London, I think, still, which was the first, like I would say, Scrum Master that I was impressed by. And she has very, very little IT background, but is super good at listening to people, understanding what's blocking them, and then figuring out ways to solve it, which in most cases aren't a technical issue. Then she can find someone that understands that technical issue, bring them into the problem area, figured what it is. So it's problem solving and people skills. And if you have that from any kind of former experience, I think you're in a very good place.
True, but we're back to you don't get that when you're starting from zero. You need experience to get there. Quiet.
I completely agree with what Simon said. Also,
Thank you.
I am a Scrum Master.
Oh, we have a mole.
Only recently. I only got my certification master in the project report.
So if you don't have experience, then do what I did. I found an old grumpy person that could help me. Yeah, that's you, Alex.
I think we're out of time. No, just not yet. But no, so I think we're starting to see a bit of a pattern. So all of these things are touted as technical frameworks, but at the end of the day, this is not a technical framework. This is all about people and processes. And essentially, how to get people to talk to each other in a structured way. And also, what I was getting at is there, in the special forces community, there is this concept of a post-mortem. Kind of sounds horrible, but that's what they call it. So after every mission, it doesn't matter if you're an officer or if you're a non-commissioned officer, you go together in a room and you dissect the mission. And anything you screwed up, you put on the table. And it is a completely safe space. Nobody can ding you for something that you did. And it's all about how do we take our experiences and improve from here. I think the challenge that you're facing, as you were alluding to, Reza, people don't dare tell others what they messed up, because if you're telling someone who has power over you, such a manager, for instance, well, then you just admitted to failure, and that can come back and bite you in the next performance review. So how, and this is also sort of kind of to else. How would you create this safe space where you can admit to failure without having that impact your next performance for you, for instance? Any thoughts on that before we hand the mic to her?
Oh, that's really difficult, because I think it also has to do with the culture of the organization you're working in. The organization I'm working in is really open to learning and, I want to say admitting failures, but it's not admitting failures, but sharing learning objectives. I've done something that wasn't optimal, and next time I'm going to do it in a different way, and I'm going to share with my coworkers what didn't work. That really works. If you're in an organization where you've got that safe space, and that's essential. Without it, you're unable to learn, I think.
And I do think, like you said, it must be on an organizational level. It's not enough to be on an IT level.
Exactly.
Because in many cases, someone in the project will report upwards.
Yep.
And if then a non-IT manager hears that, yeah, that person made this mistake, they will improve the next time. And that's the only thing they hear, because bad news travels faster than good news, unfortunately. Yep. Then we're in a bit of a challenge. So really have that psychological safety across the organization is absolutely essential. Otherwise, it won't work. And in my experience, that is true, regardless if you choose to use waterfall or whichever framework you want to work after. If you can't admit that you made a mistake, then you will never, ever improve.
And the emphasis should be on, I'm going to improve next time.
Yeah. If you want a real-life example on a national scale on that, that would be Swedish public sector.
Or the Swedish Air Force. Yeah, but we're going to come back to this. Yes, sir.
You said it needs to be done on like an organizational level and not just on your team level. If your organization is not in the same place with Agile and Scrum, how do you get them to that?
Kicking and screaming. But no, that's a really, really good question. How do you move your
Prove it. Prove it that it works. If you can do I think that's how Google did it from the start. They started when they did Google search, I think from the start, they started being a very small team that did follow the Agile principles and were, as we all know today, very, very successful. That then spread inside of Google that this team is doing something that differentiates them. So I really do think that dare to be in a small team first and have that psychological safety within that team, show the results that you're gaining from it, and it will painfully slow move across the organization.
I agree. I've seen the same thing in my organization. We were really waterfall and slowly moved to Agile, exactly in the way you're describing. One project started doing Agile, shared the results, shared the learning points. This is what we ran into, this is what we should improve. And slowly more and more projects went from waterfall to Agile.
Yeah, we are generally not doing something that works and changing into something that doesn't work. Well, it happens, but it's rare. So I have absolutely agree. Prove your point, and then you can evolve your processes and such.
Can I ask a question that goes a bit, like, maybe it's a bit of a different topic? Sometimes, like, when big companies, bigger places, or just bigger teams want to go agile, sometimes it's done from a very top-down perspective, and sometimes the people who actually do the work might not be on board that much. How do you feel about that? Can you tell me a bit about how the top-down or bottom-up approach from agile, how that interacts, and what would be the ideal situation?
Why are all three of us smiling and no one saying anything?
So I think we're thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
We've all been at this for quite a while, and we have a lot of examples of companies trying to do something from the top, just pushing it down. My experience is it doesn't work. If you do not start with people, it won't work. It's better to have a grassroots movement that propagates upwards than the other way around. Now, what you will need in order for things to spread from one team to another is executive sponsorship.
Yep.
And we're back to the whole, you need to prove your worth. Otherwise, you're not going to get any money, you're not going to get any time, and you're up shit creek.
Yep.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah, so how it usually works is that a senior leader in the organization goes to a conference, they listen to a really inspiring keynote about
Podcast.
about how Netflix is doing DevOps. Then they go back home and thinking, if Netflix can do this and the only thing we need to do is using agile methods, let's do it. They push it down and let the people figure it out.
And I mean, what could possibly be different from a company doing oil drilling and Netflix?
Yeah,
Of
same
course
thing.
it's going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah?
They are both agile. So the ideal situation is, of course, that you have a team that wants to do this, and that the senior leader goes to the conference at the same time. That would be the ideal situation. That rarely happens.
So what we can conclude from this is we all need to go to more conferences.
Are we senior leaders?
Some of us
Senior,
are.
yes, you are.
Retse, do you have any comments?
I don't dare to.
Smart man. We are actually out of time. So we've been recording for 30 minutes, which is the length of the episode. Do we have any final questions or comments from the audience? Nobody wants to go last. That's a smart move. So we've talked about Scrum, Agile, and all kinds of frameworks, and I think we concluded kind of like we were expecting to go in. It's about the people. It's about making things better, and if whatever you're trying to do does not work better, well, don't. There's no intrinsic point in doing Agile or Scrum or whatever you want to call it unless it makes sense.
Yeah, and I assume that our listeners to this podcast will have input, feedback, questions to us.
They usually do.
Yes, please feel free to reach out to us at LinkedIn or podcast@kneedeepintech.com, info@kneedeepintech.com, questions@kneedeepintech.com, I think works as well.
Simon had a blast with DNS the last time he played with it.
Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you so much to Retse for helping out and standing in for Heini, and thank you so much for all of you in the audience that took a chance on coming to see a live recording. And until next week, have a good one. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
No, because have you seen these faces? Yeah, no, we're not on YouTube.
We are on Spotify, iTunes, and on all, if not most, or
Podcasting platforms.
Yeah.
So no, audio only.
yeah. For the ones of you that want stickers, nice banners to put on your boarding card, Swedish candy, have more questions, wants to know how old Alexander is, you're more than welcome to ask away here. Come up and grab stuff, and we will be here until they throw us out.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
mean,
so much for being here, everyone.
What he said.